Very good evening, friends. A warm welcome to all of you in this session of philosophy, and we're discussing regarding the sixth chapter from Kant's philosophy, the unprejudiced observation and observer. Kant says that it is a rather difficult task to become an unprejudiced because we are born with all those specific things gifted to human beings, a memory, the intelligence, the understanding, the will, and all those things are responsible. And every time our mind goes behind the logic, behind comparing and analyzing the things. And that's why it becomes a rather difficult task to become an unprejudiced. So, if you want to really become unprejudiced, how one's approach should be. And then he explains instead of giving the names to the diseases, it is always better to find it out what is change in or alteration in the state of health of the patient in the form of signs and symptoms. Take that totality, take out portrait of the disease from the patient, from the attendants and from the physician so that you are able to come to the conclusion of a good portrait of disease with which it is possible for you to reach to the similitude. So this aspect, if you approach by keeping principles of homeopathy, the doctrines of homeopathy in your mind, and in forgetting what disease you have treated, then there is a quite possibility that you become prejudiced and you follow each and every case with considering as a new case and new patient. So, not giving so much of importance to the ultimates or pathology. It is always better to find it out what are the functional changes which happens before a pathology develops. On the basis of that, it is possible to reach to the right simillimum. So that we were discussing in last lecture. Let's go ahead with the next paragraph. Again, he imposes your mind towards the same thing. So what he says, tissue changes do not indicate the remedy. And so physicians, we must learn to examine symptoms which are prior to the morbid anatomy, to go back to the very beginning. So this is what he is explaining, that instead of looking towards the pathology, what were the functional symptoms which are prior to develop that pathology, which are very essential. You must give importance to them. Such a patient, as I have described, must be looked upon as when he was in a simple change of state before matters were complicated. Besides this, there is no matter of treatment for Bright's disease or any other organic change. Our remedies appeal to man before his state has changed into disease ultimates. And these remedies do not change because morbid anatomy has come on. They apply as much after tissue changes as before it. If we do not know what the beginnings are, we cannot in an intelligent way to treat the endings. So he's explaining that if you want to treat patients with the pathologies who comes to you at the end, and this happens quite commonly in homeopathic practice, the patient comes to you with proper diagnosis and labeled with name and pathologies. Then how to approach? Then forget what pathology is. Just find it out the state of disposition. Just find it out what are the signs and symptoms. Just find it out what was the totality prior to this. How this case has developed. So better question for the patient to ask is, since the time of your disease has started, from that time till today, whatever happened, tell me in a sequence. This is a good question. I used to ask every time to the patient. जिथपासून आजाराची सुरुवात झाली तिथपासून प्रत्येक गोष्ट सिक्वेन्सनी सांगा. You tell me it in a sequence since when the disorder has begun. Because you get many symptomatology which are essential for you to come to the right conclusion, which never happens with the pathology. With pathology, it is not possible to reach to the right simillimum because pathologies are very similar. If it is Bright's disease with each and every patient, the tissue change is found to be the same. The symptoms vary. Symptoms takes their own individuality of that person. And that's why it is so much important to go to the beginnings, find it out what are the symptoms with which it is possible for you to differentiate one individual from the another individual. In a footnote, Hahnemann says, I know not, therefore, how it was possible for physicians at the sick bed to allow themselves to suppose that, without most carefully attending to the symptoms and being guided by them in the treatment, they ought to seek and could discover only in the hidden, unknown interior what there was to be cured in the diseases. And this is what he has written in the footnote. He has written that how these people goes to the bed and just ask the patient to say to look after his tongue, to look after things, and immediately they write down the prescription, knowing that they knows the disease. Hahnemann says how it can be possible for them to reach to the dynamic interior. No one can reach to that dynamic interior, and still they says they are the true practitioner of healing art because they know the causes of disease. Hahnemann says the causes of disease is hidden in the dynamics. How they can know the causes? So this is the criticism against the old school which has been mentioned by Hahnemann in the footnote to that paragraph. And he mentions that it is not possible to find it out real cause of the disease with the naked eyes or with the microscope. Real cause cannot be touched or cannot be seen because it is dynamic in nature. The learned man in the old school today would say, "Oh, I do not care anything about your symptoms. I do not care if you are forgetful or irritable. If you do not sleep, I will give you something to make you sleep, but I must sound your liver. For that is the cause of all your trouble, and I will prescribe for that." He supposes the liver is at the cause of the trouble and believes that when he is corrected, he has cured the patient. What a false idea. He has given one example of how old school looked towards the things. So patient was complaining, I am not getting sleep. Then he examines everything, and all of a sudden he got some changes in the liver, and then he explains, you have liver problem, that's why you are not getting the sleep. How can it be? He says it is not thing. Liver is at fault, and liver has made shown certain changes over there because disease was prior to it. Disease was not, this is liver changes is not the disease, it is an ultimate. And that's why he says how false idea it is. But still today, even 100 years after the close, the same thing is happening. What we are looking for? We are looking for the pathologies inside the abdomen with the help of USG, with the help of CT scan, with the help of MRI. And what is the use of knowing that? Because those were the ultimates, not the causes of diseases. So what he says, what a false idea. His mind is upon mere theory. It is common when they do not know what has killed a man to make a post-mortem in order to discover the cause. And by this, they find out certain pathological conditions. But the aim of physician is to discover in his patient that just see these conditions are present. What do the people do when there is post-mortem is done? On postmortem, they finds it out what are the changes happens in the organs. And those changes, they label these are the causes of diseases because of which patient has died. Actually, that is not the thing because of which patient has died. This was the end result of his disease. Disease was prior to that. But you cannot find it out because it was hidden in dynamics. And that you cannot find it out. So he explains over there the concept of old school fails over there, and they goes on treating the pathologies, they goes on treating the organs only in this way, and which cannot cure the patient, which cannot treat the patient. It is true, on the other hand, that the post-mortem affords the physician the means for a general study of the results of disease, which I would not under any circumstances prevent. Indeed, there are times when I would strongly encourage the study of morbid anatomy. The physician cannot know too much about the endings of the disease. He should become thoroughly acquainted with the tissues in all conditions. But to study these with the idea that he is going thereby to cure sick folks, and or that the things he picks up at such times are going to be applied in making prescription, it's a great folly. Great folly means murkha pranche krutya. It is foolish thing. It is astonishing that physicians should expect to find out post-mortem or examinations of the organ, what to do for the sick folks. So Hahnemann and Close here criticizes the concept of pathological diseases. The pathologies are not the causes of the disease. If you do it at the post-mortem, you just see what are the changes which has happened in the tissues, but they are not the causes of diseases. Holy means foolish thing. Holy means foolish, hasyaspad, ridiculous. This concept itself is wrong. To get a renal calculi, as a cause of disease is a wrong thing. It is not cause of the disease. Renal calculi is the result of the disease. Disease is prior to it. It ultimately expressed in the form of calculi. Gallbladder calculi is the result of the disease. But allopathy, modern science, labels it as the cause of the disease. So this is too important. This is what one has to understand. This is what he used to say over there. And that's why he explains over there that these are the people who used to find it out, label those disorders with the help of those pathologies, and because of which they try go on removing this pathology. If patient is having pain in abdomen, they goes on finding it out what is wrong. If they find that appendix is increased, they remove the appendix. If they finds it out tonsil is increased, they remove the tonsil, because they considers appendicitis is the disease. Appendicitis is not the disease. Appendicitis is the result of disease. Tonsillitis is not the disease. Tonsillitis is the result of the disease. Sick folks. It is sick folks means sick man, sick persons. So the concept itself is wrong, and because of wrong concept, the treatment always becomes wrong. If you try to remove one by one organ, there never remains something inside. There was one patient from a very rich family came to me one day, and she was in a proud manner said, "Doctor, I have got 5 operations in my lifetime." I say, "Very good." She said that in childhood they removed the tonsils. After 2 3 years, my appendix got swollen. They removed the appendix. Then after 2 3 years, they find there is enlargement of the thyroid. So they do the thyroidectomy. Thereafter, again, there was a fibroid in my uterus. They removed the uterus. So asked, what is your problem? She said, I had pain in chest. I have pain in heart. So see, I said simply, remove the heart. Very good. It will be better for you. This is not the treatment. You are not treating the disease. You are removing just one by one organ because you are considering the organ is cause of the disease. It is not so. You cannot remove the brain because brain is at fault. And this is what he wants to explain over there. Physical diagnosis is very important in its own place. By means of physical diagnosis, the physician may find out the changes in the organs, how far the disease has progressed, and determine if the patient is incurable. It is necessary also in supplying information to the boards of health. It may also decide whether you should give curative or palliative treatment. But the study of pathology is a separate and distinct thing from the study of materia medica. And here he explains exactly that physical diagnosis is not important for therapeutic purpose, but for rest of the things to understand what disease the patient is suffering from, what are its pros and cons, what will be the future of the disease. To understand that, it is very much necessary to diagnose the disease. Then he says, in many instances, foolish examinations are made. In the colleges, women are examined with the speculum before a symptom is given, and if mucous membrane is read, the patient gets hemorrhages and so on in a routine way through the 5 or 6 remedies which cover all the complaints of women. Half a dozen remedies constitute armamentarium of many of the eminent gynecologists. Such a practice, as that does not cure, does not even benefit temporarily. It is simply an outrage, but bad through it. Bad though it is, perhaps it is not so great an outrage as an per, perpetrated when the physician imagines the disease is local, and that when he has cauterized it with mm, he has cauterized it, the woman is well, and not realizing for one moment that these things come from the cause, and that curing that cause should be his aim. Such is the teaching of the old school. And this is the armamentarium, means on their self. Armamentarium where you keep your medicines. It is a self or cupboard armamentarium. So what he says that this is the way with which the modern science goes ahead. The patient is explaining that she is getting severe itching at the vagina. There is a burning and everything, every symptom she is telling, and they are not interested what symptom patient is explaining. They immediately go for pervaginal examination, skip the speculum, sees what is there wrong with the naked eye. If they are able to find it out, yes, there is little bit erosion over there. What do? They consider this is the cause of your disease. Is it a cause of the disease? It is not the cause of the disease. It is the result of the disease. But they consider, labels it, it is the cause of the disease. And what do? They immediately start cauterizing the things. Electric cauterization is the common theme which is done in the gynec practice. Without considering why this has happened. They forgets what may be the cause behind that. And they tries to cauterize it. Patient feels temporarily better because the ulcer was cauterized. What has happened? The disease which was expressing at that place now doesn't express. It goes inside to the deeper structures, and then changes happens in the tissues, and ultimately patient might come with some other pathology because you have suppressed it from the external most part to the internal most part. Instead of that, if you would have listened the patient, patient was explaining that she has itching, severe irritation, severe leukorrhea, there is a voluptuous itching, cannot control, and if depending on the totality, the gynecologist might have prescribed the remedy, homeopathic remedy like a creosote or whatever it may be, depending on the totality of the symptoms, and just given it internally. That would have cured all the things because that remedy would have worked at the center. The center was at fault because of which there was the problem. But you are not treating the center, but you are treating just things at the local level. And this is what he criticized over there. This is what happens in the old school. What he says further. Now, while the signs and symptoms are the only things that can tell the physician what the patient needs, and while those signs and symptoms relate to change of state and not to the change of tissue, still there are signs that relate to tissue changes. And one who is acquainted with symptoms may consider these as indicating a change of state. For example, there are signs that indicate that pus is forming. There are appearances that will lead the experienced physician to know that the results of disease are coming. These are not valuable things in hunting for the remedy, but simply indicate certain conditions. The physician must learn to distinguish these from the symptoms that portray the state of the patient. So he is explaining that if a physician knows whatever the symptoms patient presents, then it's well and good. He can find it out a remedy on the basis of totality of the symptoms. But if the person goes towards the pathology, he cannot find it out a remedy. He cannot hunt a remedy. And this is what happens when the concept is wrong. The concept should be clear. Whatever may be the disease which happens to be there and expresses in the form of signs and symptoms, you must give importance to the signs and symptoms instead of just going towards to find it out what is wrong with the cells, what is wrong with the tissues. Those never gives you a right simillimum. If you want to find it out, right simillimum, What is needed is just find it out what is altered state of health expressing in the form of signs and symptoms. And now he explained, we are now prepared to see that if the patient is cured from the cause to effect, he must remain cured. So if you would have find it out right remedy on the basis of totality and give that remedy to the patient is cured at the center. Then automatically periphery will be cured. That is, if the true inner disorder is turned into order, he will remain cured because this order, which is of the innermost, will cause no flow into order, that which is of the outermost. And finally, the functions of the body to become order. So whatever remedy which we are going to give to the patient on the basis of this totality of the symptoms will work at the center. Then if the center is cured, automatically the periphery will be cured. And this is a right way of treating the patient to bring again an order from the disorder. The vital order will cause the tissue order because the vital order extends it into the very outermost of the tissue. And the tissue government and order is a vital order. So if the cure is from cause to effects or from within out, the patient will remain cured. The incurable cases, in incurable cases, the effects may be removed temporarily or palliative, but the patient himself has not been cured as to the cause. And owing to the fact that the patient cannot be cured, the old changes will return and grow stronger because it is in the nature of chronic diseases to increase and progress. So if your concept is clear that whatever may be the peripheral pathology is there, it is because of internal disorder, it is because of internal cause. Then you just treat that on the basis of totality of the symptoms and applying the law of similarity. Give the right remedy. That remedy will work at the center. Remove that internal disorder, automatically periphery will be cured. But if your concept is wrong and you consider that disease is at the periphery and you treat it locally, then things go in a wrong way. Temporarily, there will be palliation. Patient might feel better for a month or two, and then the recurrence comes. And whenever recurrence comes, it is always in an aggravated form. So palliation is always followed by an aggravation, is the rule, and that happens when you treat the diseases locally. So the concept is making clear in your mind that treat the center with the help of totality of the symptoms, and that's all. You will be unprejudiced by this method. But if you treat the pathology, you becomes more and more prejudiced. And to conclude the chapter, what he says is very important. Certain results of disease which remain after the patient is cured can be removed if necessary, but it is not well to remove them before the patient is cured. So if you would have treated a patient internally and patient is cured internally, he is happy, but some remnants are remaining which are not disappeared after, then you can remove that surgically. It's okay because you have cured the center. But if you treat those results first instead of curing the internal disorder, then disease will increase. If a patient has a disease of the foot bones after bad injury and foot cannot be cured, first cure the patient, and then if the foot is so clumsy and useless that he would rather have a wooden one, remove the foot. If you have to deal with the worthless honeycomb knee joint means it is a uh, charcot joint. It is fused joint because of the pathology which happens inside over there, and that pathology makes it fixed. The joint becomes so fixed, which that it cannot have flexion and extension action, and it is as if full of swelling over there. So if you have to deal with the worthless honeycomb knee joint, first cure the patient, and then if the knee can never be useful, the limb is cold and the muscles are flabby, consider the question of replacing it with the artificial one. If the economy after being turned into the health cannot cure the knee, nothing can be done to the knee can cure it. Do not say that the patient is sick because he has white swelling, but white swelling is there because the patient is swelling. Patient is sick. So here he makes concepts very, very, very clear. He makes the concept that disease is at the center If you treat that disease, then remnants will automatically disappear. The peripheral effects will automatically disappear. But if you treat directly the periphery with the help of local treatment, the center will remain at fault and comes out with aggravated in the aggravated form with metastasis. So if you want to treat periphery, always hit the center with the help of totality of the symptom, match the remedy and give that remedy. That remedy will cure the internal disorder. Then if remnants remains and if you want to remove them, you can remove them surgically. The concept which he has mentioned over there in this chapter is very clear. How to become unprejudiced with this way. Looking towards the state of health and state of disease. Considering state of disease and which is expressing in the form of signs and symptoms. Taking into consideration the portrait from the patient, from the attendant, from his own observation and matching the right simillimum for the case. So sixth chapter related with the unprejudiced observation, the concepts of diseases and how to treat diseases. Whole thing he has narrated over there in this specific chapter. So this lecture, sixth lecture, is very important from every point of view, from practice point of view, and even from exam point of view to the students of homeopathy. So we'll conclude this session over here, and we'll meet again at 8:30 with the remaining part of Cilicia, but I think that today also it is not possible to complete the Cilicia. It might require tomorrow's session also. Be there at the at 8:30 with the Cilicia and we can learn a lot regarding Cilicia, the aspects. Thank you. If any queries are there, we can have discussion. Otherwise, we'll conclude. Any question?
Hello, good
Okay.
evening, sir.
Yes, I'm not getting your voice clearly. Yes, Arya,
हा सर, मला एक क्वेरी होती.
बोल.
हा सर, माझ्या सासऱ्यांना ना अष्टगंध वापरल्यामुळे त्याच्या केमिकलमुळे ना ब्लॅक स्पॉट आला फोरहेडवर. तर बोविस्टा दिलं देऊ का आर्सेनिक अल्बम देऊ?
अरे असं देण्यापेक्षा त्यांची केस घे, मेडिसिन काय येतं ते काढ, असं स्पेसिफिक कन्सिडर करून नको दे. डोंट यूज लाईक
अच्छा.
दॅट. फर्स्ट फाइंड इट आउट व्हॉट इज हिज रेमेडी. Don't go on single symptom. Just find it out what is his remedy and give that remedy. That will be work better. Giving Bovista or giving this or that is not the thing. Just take whole case and then find it out what is the remedy and give that remedy. That will work.
ओके सर, थँक यू सर.
Okay. Okay. So we'll meet tomorrow at the same time with philosophy session and 8:30 with mathematical session. Thanks a lot.